back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Happy Sunday, everyone. For today's video, I have some thrift flips for you. I decided to create a small vignette focusing on a very neutral, creamy colored palette. I love how everything came out and comes together. I hope you guys like the projects too. And without further ado, let's get to today's video. My first project for today is a pretty simple makeover of this little star. Now, like I said in the beginning of the video, my theme for today is neutral Christmas. And when I first bought this star, honestly, I had planned on having it be more of a bold Christmassy statement, probably using some gold, but I wanted to use it in today's video, so I decided to go a different direction. And instead, I am going to be giving it more of a primitive, kind of chippy, crackled look. I started with a coat of Rustoleum 2X spray paint in Espresso, and before my spray paint was completely dry, I'm going in with a coat of Sweet Pickins Milk Paint in the color Creamy. Now, I did not add any extra bond to my paint because I really want that crackly finish. And once I have that first coat of paint down, I'm going in with my hair dryer to add a little bit of heat to the paint to really help get that crackle to come through. I know it's impossible to see in the video, but I was getting some pretty good crackle with that first coat of paint. Once it was completely dry, I went in with 2 more coats. I did go ahead and dry in between each one, just so that I had really good coverage on my star. Once my paint was completely dry, I went in with some sandpaper to just smooth everything out and also knock off any chips that might have formed in my paint. So the base, I just mainly wanted to get nice and smooth. I did a little bit of distressing just to make it match the star a little bit better and bring some of that darker tone out from underneath the creamy paint. And you can see on my star, I did end up getting a little bit of chippiness, which I liked. And then I also distressed the center parts of the star as well, again, just to make everything a little more cohesive. Once I was finished sanding, I went ahead and wiped everything down to get rid of the sanding dust, and then I began working on the bottom of this. I had actually left the tag on, so I needed to take that off. I sanded the paint that had kind of collected on the bottom of this off, and then I realized the bottom was in pretty terrible shape. So I went ahead and put a couple of coats of DIY's Cottage Color Anvil on the bottom just to make it look a little bit prettier. Once I had the bottom cleaned up and it was completely dry, it was time to seal my creamy paint. And for this project, I decided to go in with Sweet Pickins oil wax in dark. I figured this would really help emphasize all of the crackle while sealing the paint at the same time. So I'm just brushing that on with a little chip brush, putting a good even coat all over. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to let it sit for about 15 minutes before I come back and wipe off the excess wax. Now the oil wax definitely takes a little more work to remove the excess. I like to go in first with a dry shop towel and just take off as much of the bulk of it as I possibly can. And then I go back in with another dry shop towel to remove any residue that's left behind. Keep in mind too that you can leave fingerprints in your piece if there's any wet oil wax and you touch it. So make sure that your piece is nice and dry when you're finished. I love how this star came out. I really think it's a perfect addition to not only a Christmas vignette, but it can be left up all year long, which I love. I really hope you guys like it too. When I saw this cute little snowman at the Goodwill just recently, I knew I needed to try and give him a bit of a makeover. I decided to add him to today's vignette, and so he is going to get a very neutral makeover, and I'm starting with some spray paint just to help cover up the darker colors so I don't need to use quite so much of my DIY paint. Once he was completely dry, I'm going in with 2 good coats of DIY's color in Crinoline, which is this beautiful creamy off-white. I just love it for Christmas and of course all year. And I am pouncing or stippling the paint on. I feel like this really helps to work that paint down into some of the details in this piece and really make sure I've got good coverage. And because the DIY paint is relatively thick to begin with, this also adds a really good texture to my piece. Once both of my coats of paint are completely dry, it's time to seal my little snowman, and I am starting with a coat of DIY's clear wax. I'm going in with a soft bristle brush and just making sure to work that wax into all of the details in this piece, and then I'm very gently wiping back the excess. In places where I really don't want to rub too hard, I just kind of dab the excess wax off, and for the rest of him where he's relatively smooth to begin with, I just gently wipe the excess wax away. Once I was finished with the clear wax, I decided to really bring out the detail. I would go in with some DIY dark wax. Now, one thing I like to do with my dark wax is add a little bit of mineral spirits to thin it up a bit. For the heavier textured areas, I'm going in with a little bit thicker wax just so that it really lays down well into all of that beautiful detail. And then I'm carefully wiping back the excess with a dry shop towel. For the flatter areas or the smoother areas where I really don't want too much color, I really thinned the wax out a lot with the mineral spirits, and I'm using it more like a glaze so that it's a little easier to wipe back and just doesn't make quite such an impact on that creamy paint. It also really helps that I have that layer of clear wax down first to act as a bit of a buffer between the paint and the dark wax. So from here, I'm just going to work my way around the entire snowman, again, using a little bit thicker wax in areas where I want more of the detail to really stand out, and the thinner wax in areas where I want a little less color. Once I finished with the dark wax, I decided Mr. Snowman really needed a little bit of Christmas sparkle. So I am going in with some Decor wax by Redesign with Prima. This one's called Eternal. It's a beautiful gold, and I am going over all of the detail in Mr. Snowman with that gold. So I'm just rubbing it on very gently with my fingertip, and I'm going over his scarf and the trim on his hat and other little areas, again, just to add a little bit of sparkle. Once I was finished adding the gold wax, my little snowman project is finally finished. I have to say, I think he looks 100 times better than he did when I bought him. I love the way he came out, and I think he's a perfect addition to my neutral vignette. For my third and final project, I'm going to use this piece of wood to create a sign. Now, I really did kind of like the fruit that was on it, but it was in pretty bad repair. It had some cracks in it and places where the paint was actually starting to peel up a little bit. So it just needed to be sanded down and started over. So I am sanding all of the fruit off, and there was kind of a finish underneath that I needed to sand off as well. And once I had my board all nice and clean, I went ahead and went around the edges and sanded the finish off from there as well. Once I was finished sanding, I took the board back inside and gave it a really good cleaning with a little bit of mineral spirits, just to make sure I had a nice clean base for my sign. Now, since I had a little bit of Sweet Pickins Creamy left over from my star project, I went ahead and used that as my paint for this piece. I'm going in with 2 good coats of that. I didn't add any extra bond, and you really don't need extra bond when you're going over raw wood. However, since the little indentation where it's routered had the original finish, I did end up getting a little bit of chippiness there, which I was okay with. Apparently, I forgot to film myself sanding this board, but I did go over it with some 220 grit sandpaper to smooth it out. And as you can see in the corner there, I did get a little bit of chippiness in that routered area around the sign. I created the stencil using my Cricut and then applied it to my board, and then I'm going in with DIY's little black dress to fill that in. I work my way across the sign in sections. I pounce a little bit of paint onto each letter, and then I go over it again with a little bit more paint until I have full coverage on each of the letters. Once I had my stencil completely filled in, it was time to remove the vinyl. I have to say that the vinyl stuck really well to the milk paint, to the point where I had a difficult time trying to remove it from certain areas, especially when I was weeding it out of the letters. I didn't end up pulling any of the paint up with it though, which was a relief, and I was just careful and worked slowly until I had it all done. Once that was finished, I wanted to seal in everything, and so I'm just going over the entire sign with a coat of Rustoleum's matte spray, just spraying it on pretty liberally, especially over the letters. And honestly, I prefer a spray-on sealer for my signs so that I don't have to worry about smearing any of my paints. I decided I wanted to add just a touch more detail to my sign, so I grabbed out one of the newer molds by Redesign with Prima. This one's called Shimmering Holiday Ornaments, and I made a couple of castings from that, and then I grabbed a casting I've had in a box for ages. I don't remember the name of the mold set it came from, and I am painting all 3 of those with Little Black Dress by DIY. I'm just pouncing the paint on so that I get good coverage down into all of the little details, and I did go over them with 2 coats of the paint. Once that was dry, I needed to seal them, so I'm going over all of them with a coat of clear wax by DIY, just brushing that on with a small brush and then using a dry shop towel to remove the excess. Now, of course, these ornaments needed a little bit of shimmer, so I'm going over all the details with a little bit of Decor wax by Redesign called Eternal. I love this wax, and I'm just applying that with my fingertip. And of course, if you're interested in any of these products, you can find them on my website at www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. Now the final step was to glue these down to my sign, which I forgot to record, but I just used a little bit of Titebond for that, and then my sign was finished. I absolutely love the way that it came out, and I hope you do too. That is it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my projects and I hope you enjoyed today's video. What did you think of the very neutral, creamy colored vignette? I love the way that it came together. The thing I really like about the softer tones is that they go with anything. So regardless of what color palette you're using, it's always nice to have some creamy whites to go in and kind of bounce other colors on. They go with greens and pinks and blues and yellows, whatever your heart desires, basically. So very versatile in the decor. So I hope you liked today's projects and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then of course, don't forget to drop a comment below. Let me know if you had a favorite project and what that was. I would love to hear from you guys. And of course, just a quick reminder, the paint and products you see me use can be purchased through me at my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry the DIY paint and products as well as the Sweet Pickins Milk Paint and products, along with some Recycled Treasures decoupage papers and of course some Redesign with Prima, so go check those out there. And then let's see, for Thursday's video, being as how it is Thanksgiving, it will probably be something relatively simple. I do have a little end table that I am working on that I just need to get finished, so hopefully I will have that for you. If not, maybe a couple simple flips. But at any rate, I will post that Thursday morning, so while you're drinking your coffee and getting ready for the holiday, hopefully my video will be up and ready for you. So I hope you'll be able to join me back here on Thursday. Until then, have a great rest of your weekend and beginning of the week. Thank you guys so much for being here. Happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you on Thursday. Bye.